Hello everyone, I am Suham Kumar, and today I am going to talk about the most important topic of the Hadoop ecosystem, that is the yarn, which stands for yet another resource negotiator. In this presentation, I will be go through what yarn actually is, why it was introduced, how its architecture works, the key components involved, its workflow, and finally the benefit it brings to the big data processing. So let's start it with a quick overview of Yarn. So Yarn, or yet another resource negotiator, is the heart of Hadoop 2.0 and the later versions. It was designed to fix the major issues in Hadoop 1.0, mainly related to scalability and resource management. So think Yarn as the brain of Hadoop. It decides what job runs where and how much resource each job gets. By doing this, Yarn makes Hadoop faster, more efficient, and capable of running many different types of data processing tasks. So in the next slide, we have why we use our Yarn, or why Yarn was introduced. Now let's talk about why Yarn was needed in the first place. In the older Hadoop 1.0 system, there was a single component called the job tracker that had to handle everything from resource management to job scheduling and monitoring. Because of that, the system became a bottleneck. It could not scale well, and if the job tracker failed, the entire cluster would go down. Also, Hadoop 1.0 only supported the MapReduce processing model, which made it very rigid. So, to make Hadoop more flexible and scalable, Yarn was introduced in Hadoop 2.0. It separated resource management from job handling, making the system much more reliable and powerful. So, if Hadoop 1.0 was denied, there must be some limitations. So, let's see the limitations of Hadoop 1.2. Before the Yarn, Hadoop 1.0 or 1.0 worked fine for small workload, but it had some big drawbacks. First, there was a single point of failure. If the job tracker crashed, every running job stopped. Second, it had scalability issues as one job tracker could not handle thousands of tasks. Third, it was rigid, only MapReduce jobs could run. Nothing else like Spark or They. And finally, resource utilization was poor. Some nodes stayed idle while others were overloaded. So, in short, Hadoop 1.2 was like a single person trying to control a huge crowd, and that just did not scale well. In this slide, I have mentioned some others also, the limitations, that is the latency limitations, the security, the length of the line of the code, and the vulnerable by the nature. So let's move on the topic, that is what is Yarn. So Yarn stands for yet another resource negotiator, and it completely changed how Hadoop works. It's basically the resource management and job scheduling layer of Hadoop 2.0. You can imagine Yarn as a smart operating system for the Hadoop cluster, decides which application will run, where it will run, how much memory or CPU it gets, and when it should run. Because of Yarn, Hadoop became a general purpose data platform instead of being limited to just a map reduce. So that's the basic overview of the Yarn. In the next slide, we have the motivation of map reduce version 2. That what made the motivation to introduce the map reduce 2, that also known as the Yarn. So, what motivated Hadoop to move to MapReduce version 2? Well, the main goal was to fix the issues in the old version and make Hadoop more flexible. With Yarn, Hadoop separated resource management from job execution. Now, other frameworks like Spark, This, and Flink could run side by side on the same cluster. There was a big shift. Hadoop went from being a single purpose system to a multi framework big data platform. I have mentioned three topic, three main points like the scalability bottleneck caused by a single job tracker in Yahoo. The second point is the computation resources, and the third point is that Hadoop was designed to run the MapReduce jobs only. That's the basic motivation for introducing the MapReduce 2, or you can say the yarn. So here is the architecture of the yarn. Let's dive into the architecture. Yarn follows a master-slave model. At the top, we have the resource manager, which is the master. It controls and allocates resources across the cluster. Every node has a node manager, which monitors its own system resource and reports back to the resource manager. Then, for each application, Yarn creates an application master, which coordinates that job. It requests resource and track task progress. And finally, there are containers. These are like small boxes of CPU and memory where tasks actually run. Together, these four parts make Yarn most powerful, modular, and scalable. Here, the four basic lines were also shown, mainly the map reduce status, the job submissions, the node status, and the resource request. The continuous line and the dotted lines are represented here. You can see, and this is the resource request that comes from the app master to the resource manager. In the next slide, we have the key components of Yarn. The key components are resource manager. The first one is the resource manager. It's the central authority that manages cluster resource. The master of the cluster, it keeps track of all available resource and schedules job. In also in the resource manager, there are two more component or element, you can say. That is, the first one is the scheduler manager and the second one is the application manager. The second component of the yarn is node manager, a worker that manages containers and monitors resource usage on each node. The third one is the application master, the application specific manager that negotiates resource. Means that the it's created for each job. It negotiates resources and coordinates the execution. The fourth one is the container, the actual environment where a task run with the specific memory and CPU signed. It means then the container is the main part, you can say, where the all the tasks were run or the job were run. This clean separation of duties helps Yarn manage even very large cluster smoothly. Now let's have a look on the workflow of Yarn. Now let's look at how Yarn actually works step by step. I have mentioned step like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at each step I have mentioned their role. So at the starting, that is the first, a user submits a job to the resource manager. Second, the resource manager starts an application master for that job. Third, the application master requests resource container from the resource manager. Fourth, node managers launch those containers and start running the task. And fifth, the application master monitors everything, collects the results, and reports back when the job is done. So Yarn's workflow is all about coordination, each component doing its specific role to keep the cluster efficient and organized. That's the basic workflow of Yarn, means how Yarn does their work, or the process or the procedure of working of Yarn. Next, we have the benefit of Yarn. Yarn brings some amazing benefit to the Hadoop ecosystem. Let's start with the first, that is support multiple models like batch, streaming, and interactive processing. Next, we have the cluster utilization. In this, resource freed by one application can be reused by another, ensuring the maximum efficiency. It means, you can say, the better resource utilization. The next, we have higher scalability, can handle thousands of nodes and jobs simultaneously. Fourth, we have multi-tenant system. The multiple frameworks like Spark's MapReduce can run together on the same Hadoop cluster. And fifth, you can say it improved performance and fault tolerance. If one job fails, others keep running. Overall, Yarn makes Hadoop more flexible, efficient, and enterprise ready. So, summarize this presentation to wrap up. Yarn, yet another resource negotiator, is the backbone of Hadoop 2.0 and beyond. It manages resource intelligently, separates job scheduling from execution, and supports multiple frameworks on the same cluster. With its architecture built around the resource manager, node manager, application master, and coordinate containers, Yarn ensures efficient resource uses, scalability, and fault tolerance. In short, Yarn transformed Hadoop from a single function system into a modern multi-framework data platform. So that's the summary of the Yarn architecture in details in data analytics subject. So at last, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you now have a clear understanding of what yarn is, how it works, and why it's such an important part of the Hadoop ecosystem.